And now, AM 650 presents your source for leading-edge news and information on today's hottest products and services. This is Experts on Call on AM 650.
Well, hello, and welcome to Quay Pacific's Talk About Strata. I'm Sterling Fox. My co-host again on this edition of the program is Tony Giventu, Executive Director of the Condominium Homeowners Association of British Columbia and much-read British Columbia condo columnist in all of those papers across the province. Hello, Tony.
Hey, Sterling. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, and on our program today, we're going to talk about contractors as they apply to the world of strata, and I guess the primary contractor at any strata is the property manager, right?
Yeah, generally most strata corporations, regardless of size, we have stratas that are as small as a duplex who have a manager who manages the day-to-day affairs of the strata, because that's one of the whole reasons why people moved into a strata, so they don't have to do that. And
right.
So, we have everything from 2 units up to almost 1,100 units where we have a strata manager and a strata management company, which is licensed under the Real Estate Council, who will be hired to perform many of the tasks of the strata corporation.
Now, in an apartment scenario, those of us who have rented in apartment buildings over the years know there's a super in the building somewhere.
Yes.
That person is in charge of the building, keeping everything running smoothly. They usually live on site. Sometimes there's a second couple that does the backup super jobs.
Yes.
And they're in residence at all times, and they're the people you go knocking on the door when something goes wrong. Does a property manager do the same as a super in an apartment building? Do they, for example, usually live on site?
There are very few circumstances where a strata manager actually lives on site, and that's partly because a strata is large enough to support a single strata manager for one project. But strata managers may actually manage a number of properties.
Oh, okay.
Right. So it might be a number of properties in a region. It could be 6 or 8 high-rises within a 2-block radius that they manage. It could be a few large bareland stratas that they manage out in the valley. There's a variety of relationships between the strata managers and a variety of relationships in contract services. It really comes down to what do we want the strata manager to do for us as a contractor.
Is it reasonable to say that for a strata council, their most important decision is hiring the right property manager?
It's absolutely critical. And it's not only the Strata Council's important decision to hire the right strata manager and to make sure that relationship works, but to make sure that they have a very clear understanding of the roles and responsibilities of what the manager is doing, what the Strata Council's responsibilities are, and they actually do this. Look at it this way. The employer is the Strata Corporation. Right? That we are contracting out these services.
Yes.
The employee is the strata manager and the brokerage. We are contracting you to provide these services for us. But strata corporations get themselves into a lot of trouble with the relationship with their strata managers for a variety of reasons. But I think one of the issues that I find most bewildering is everyone always says, well, how much will it cost a door to manage our property? When I answer a phone call from an owner who says, well, how do we know what's a good strata management company and what's a bad strata management
Good question.
company, right?
Yeah.
And there are certainly some resources out there to help you rate different kinds of companies. But the problem is I have seen some of the best results from what we thought was a bad management company and some of the worst results from what we thought was a good management company, because it really isn't as much the company, but the relationship that exists between the strata council, the employer, and the company, the employee. And so, you have this contract relationship between the parties, and it's a tug of war if you're not clear on what the roles and responsibilities are, straight up front.
Now, if and the first contract that you're signing as the Strata Council is the bringing in of either an individual or more likely a property management company who in turn will assign an individual to your strata.
Exactly.
And that company in turn is then now authorized on your behalf to sign contracts with other subcontractors, aren't they? If you bring in a property manager and they need a landscaping company, the Strata Council isn't going to hire them. The property manager is, aren't they?
Well, it depends on the relationships of the contract, but generally speaking, you as a strata corporation will retain a strata management brokerage. They are the overall company that has a group of managers, administrative staff,
right.
And they will manage a portfolio of properties. What services that you delegate delegate to them or what authority you delegate to them comes down to the nuts and bolts of the contract. So, the difficulty of the relationship is everybody wants, comments and opinions on how this relationship works and who does what, and how do we get the best out of the relationship. But almost always everyone who's commenting on the relationship has some interest in the outcome.
Well, sure.
Right? And
sure.
that's one of the difficulties that strata councils have, is how do we find some impartial advice so that we're actually talking about our needs and our perspective of what we want. And I think that's one of the challenges that we have. It starts with a strata council identifying what their jobs really are. Because then when they know what they actually have to do as a strata council, they can then say, all right, we're going to delegate some of these responsibilities to a strata manager. CHOA has on their website a checklist of roles and responsibilities of the strata council. So the checklist provides an understanding of all the different kinds of duties that the strata corporation has to provide.
Okay.
A lot of those you can hand over to the strata manager. For example, the monthly collection of the amounts payable to the strata corporation, not the enforcement of bylaws, but just the monthly collection.
You mean your condo fees?
Your condo fees,
right.
User fees, any kind of leases, contracts, licenses. The fees that are paid to the strata corporation is one of the things that's delegated frequently to the strata manager. Generally, the accounting package is overwhelming, and by taking it and handing it to a strata management company, what the strata is hoping is going to happen is that they're going to be impartial from the strata council about the brokerage, right? So they're going to show the revenues, they're going to show the expenses. They have a duty to give the strata council on a monthly basis a reconciliation of all of those accounts and balances and all of the bank accounts and balances. And from that, the strata council will make some decisions. But all the work of the basic work of the collection is what the strata manager and the management company are going to be doing. Mm-hmm. Now, the duty of the manager is to make sure that council are going to be making lawful decisions around things like bylaw enforcements and receivables and collectibles, so that the strata manager has under themselves the authority to go ahead. And I think that's where there's a lot of breakdown in the relationship. Strata councils kind of abdicate all of their responsibility
to the
manager.
We've hired you, so now you take over and do everything.
You just take it over.
Right.
But the problem is there are a lot of things the manager can't do without those monthly council meetings where decisions are made which give the strata manager the authority to go to the next step. So the relationship is absolutely critical. It's essential. Probably the most important relationship the strata council and the strata owners have is going to be with their strata manager.
Now, you mentioned a checklist at CHOA. CHOA, by the way, friends, is the Condominium Homeowners Association. And the website, it's a fabulous website, is CHOA, CHOA.bc.ca. It's a terrific resource website. Especially if you're just looking at this whole notion of condos, is it for me or not? Or if you're on a strata council somewhere in the province and you need a little guidance, a little straightening up on some of the rules and regs, it's all there at choa.bc.ca, including that checklist, Tony.
Including the checklist. We've put onto the site, right onto the homepage, a little collection of these guides specific for this show, so people can just go directly right to them. They don't have to surf through the site. So just look at the bullet on the homepage with respects to this show, and you'll see everything with respects to tonight's show. So the relationship, though, is negotiated. I think people think that there are standards. Another, a myth that we hear all the time. Well, there's a standard contract, right? There is no standard contract. There's no such thing. The Strata Property Agents of BC have retained legal counsel to design a contract for their members.
Right.
There are strata managers who are not members of that association who use different contracts, but there is no standard contract. The only conditions is that the contract has to meet the conditions required under the Real Estate Services Act.
But the contract is really you were talking about all of these services that you hire a property management company to perform. These are negotiable, your word. So at the end of the negotiating, we want to retain you and your company to manage our property. All of those elements that have been agreed to in the negotiation need to be written down and agreed to again in the form of a formal contract, don't they?
Well, and absolutely. When Strata corporations are hiring a new management company, what they will do is they will get proposals from companies. Frequently people will send out a representative to talk to the Strata Council about what their needs are, what they can do for them. Lots of discussion, lots of information, and then a contract is sent over and somebody signs it without reading it. Right? And so there are a lot of assumptions made about what services are going to be provided, what the Strata Council is expecting is going to happen, and what the Strata manager is understanding is going to happen are frequently two different things. And
Now,
this is where it goes sideways, right out of the gate.
If you're buying something expensive and there's a contract involved, you're smart to not before you sign the contract, or getting a job, anything that involves you signing off on something. It's usually pretty solid advice and policy to have that contract reviewed by a lawyer and get the official thumbs up. Yeah, I'd sign this if I were you. It's okay. It's all clean. It's good. Or not. No, I wouldn't sign this because look at Clause 6. That's not about you. It's about them, and you lose.
Right.
So why do Strata councils, as a matter of course, given how much they're going to spend on some of these property management deals, why don't they have these contracts either reviewed or preferably even drawn up by their lawyers?
Well, one of the problems is they may not have anticipated what is going to be happening with respects to the contract. They may not have anticipated that halfway through the year that they were going to run into a trouble with the management company. Maybe the management company has transferred out and they've terminated the contract, or maybe the Strata Corporation have voted to terminate the contract.
Sure. Yep.
And odds are there might not be money in the budget for consulting for services like legal, for engineering, for consulting, for building specifications. All the business that the Strata Council doesn't want to do, they need to budget for those types of things. Do you want to provide your own legal services, your own engineering services? If you're doing projects on building specifications or those types of things with major repairs, do you want to be doing those, or should you be budgeting for them in the contracting process? So it's about money frequently.
Well, I was just going to say, and because it's sounding to me that the average condo owner or potential condo owner listening to us right now might be drawing the conclusion that because you keep saying this about condo fees, management and sellers, developers would like to go, well, you can move into this fantastic new building and it's only $150 a month condo fees. And Tony's advice always is, well, this is 2013, and in this reality, you get what you pay for. And if you're not paying very much, chances are you're not going to get very much. So as a buyer or a shopper even, you should obviously ask, well, what are the monthly condo fees in this building? And based on that number, Tony, that should immediately tell you that they're spending, an appropriate amount of money to hire a good property manager, or because the fees are so low, they're cutting corners and this might not be the place you want to live.
Well, the Strata Corporation could have actually undervalued what their fees should be, which means they're going to have minimal services right across the board.
Okay.
Right? And that even goes to Strata Management Services. Many of the Strata Management companies, to help Stratas meet budgets, provide accounting-only services. Mm-hmm. So they basically do basic accounting and administration.
And that's where the standard template might exist, right?
It doesn't exist.
In terms of being able to manage the condo's funds in, expenses out on a monthly basis.
Yeah, there's no standard.
Really?
There is no standard. It's all contractual. When you engage a Strata management company, what you are essentially doing is creating an agency agreement as well.
Right.
That agency means essentially that when they are acting, they are you. So there's quite a bit more responsibility on the shoulders of the Strata manager, and more responsibility on the shoulders of the Strata Council to ensure they're actually executing the contract. But go back a little bit about, getting a lawyer to review the contract.
Yeah.
When you're going through the search process as a Strata council, someone needs to take notes clearly and clearly identify point by point what is the company going to do for us, right? Mm-hmm. Or what's our expectations of services? Because the longer that list gets, the more money you're going to be paying for services.
Right.
You can certainly get premium boutique services, and everybody says, well, what's the cost per door? The cost per door means nothing because every strata is different size.
Yeah, I guess.
Right?
Yeah.
And so where it really comes down to is, what does it really cost to manage your property? And if you're spending $15 a door for Strata management services, you're not getting very much.
Right, right.
Because most of that's going to get absorbed into administration fees, collections, financial reports, record keeping. It'll get absorbed, most of those costs, into that area, with very few meetings on site, very little supervision, if any, of what's happening, few site inspections, very little work actually done in the location.
We need to take a break here, my friend, but just before we do, is there a kind of a benchmark or rule of thumb vis-a-vis a monthly condo fee that if it's below, I don't know, $200 a month or below $300 a month, chances are people are cutting corners. There's just not enough money flowing to get all those jobs that need to get done every month. So I'm just trying to looking at warning signs or clues for people to go, wait a second, that's really low.
Well, let's talk about that when we come back. Because
Okay.
I think what we need to do is we need to approach it from a different way. We need to talk about, does the Strata Corporation actually have a budget plan each year that incorporates all the needs and then sets values for what those needs are?
Right. And from a consumer perspective, of course, it's getting the best bang possible for your buck.
Absolutely.
This is Key Pacific's Talk About Strata on AM 650, and we'll be right back.
There's still more ahead with Experts on Call, the show focused on delivering relevant and beneficial consumer information. This is Experts on Call on AM 650.